and welcome to Mapping the Master Plan. I'm Tom Bott, I'm the town planner here in Kingston, Mass. With me today on our inaugural show for Mapping the Master Plan is Susan Boyer, the chairman of the Master Plan Committee, a Kingston resident, and Ted Brovitz, who is our Master Plan consultant, Ted from Brovitz Community Design. We will be having a series of shows, and we thank PAC TV very much for having us, over the next few weeks to talk about the Master Plan. The plan isn't necessarily a book. A book does come with the plan, but the plan is a process. And we'll get into a lot of the particulars of it. But essentially, there are a lot of components, and you can get bogged down in some of the components. And you can get bogged down in some of the technical things as well. So we'll be trying to keep this technical free as much as we can. If someone lapses in the jargon, I do have the jargon bell. So if someone, we're all going to put you on your honor here. If someone starts to jargon somebody, please, ring
the bell.
Do not hesitate.
Ring the
bell.
Now,
I should say, as Susan and I have worked together for years, I have a sense of humor. I like to think I have a sense of humor.
Yes, you do.
I have a serious job, but I don't take myself all that seriously. So there may be some humor during the show.
Attempted humor. Yeah.
Attempted. Susan's spouse and my spouse both say, there really should be an adult sitting between us.
There should be at all times.
Ted is over there.
Do you want to switch seats? Or
we may have to later.
So forgive me for those minor lapses. But we wanted to talk about the master plan. What the master plan is, as I said, it's a process. We want to take a look, a snapshot at where we're at today. And we do that with data, we do that with images, we do that with people's opinions. That snapshot we use to determine where we're at, and then we go out in the community, we talk to people about, well, where do we want to be?
Right.
Based on what we understand from our snapshot and research, we know what direction we're heading, and the question is that the direction we want to go in? And what can we do about directing that to go the direction we are? And there are a lot of things that conspire against a community trying to make the community the way they would like it. And we will talk about some of those constraints and limitations and things like that. So with that, very basic background, I just want to give my guests just a chance to say hello and introduce themselves as well. So Susan, may I call you Susan or Mrs. Boyer?
Susan is just lovely, thank you.
Chairman Boyer.
Chairman Boyer, yes. Well, from a historic point of view, I was on the original implementation committee from the previous master plan, so I have a little bit of experience with...
Implementation committee?
Is that a jargon?
I don't know.
I don't think it's a jargon just yet.
All right.
You can ring me later.
At the end of the master plan, we'll actually have an implementation schedule. We try to make those things in the master plan happen. So implementation.
And that's where I came in on the previous master plan. So that was in '98, roughly. So it's been a while since we started this process again. So as Tom said, it is in fact a process. It took us a while to finance it so that we could have Ted help us, because I think one of the things we learned from the last one was how difficult it is for the average citizen to come together and really map out where the town's going to be 5-10 years from now. So I'm very thankful to have Ted. But since that process, since we were able to start it, we began with finding and putting a committee together, and that in and of itself is a challenge, because you want representatives from a large section of your town without it being cumbersome to have a quorum for a meeting and to be able to make decisions. So that's where we started, and the master plan comes through the planning board, of which I am a member, and I was kindly elected to be the representative from the planning board on the master plan committee, and then chairwoman after that, chairperson.
And then, and the master plan committee is a component parts. There are representatives from the planning board and the board of selectmen, the board of health, the conservation commission, open space. We have the citizen representatives. We have an environmental representative, a business representative.
Yep, that's correct.
In order to get some balance.
Right.
But with all those representatives, we still need the people, because in the absence of the public participating and talking about their concerns, we got nada.
Right, absolutely, and that was I think one of the things that Ted brought to the table initially was that open evening we had, where it was open to the public and people could come in, and we had maps, and we had sticky notes and directions about how to put things, and to start to formalize what are your concerns in town, because I have mine and other members have theirs, but we wanted to know the town, not just the members of the committee. And I found that to be extremely helpful in directing our focus. And we've had many conversations about what those topics were and how we can put them together in our next stage of the plan, and break them down into subheadings and places that we're going to go from there.
Excellent. And let's talk with Ted. Like Susan, with a committee, a group of people. Ted has a group of people who come with him as well.
That's right.
His people. So if you want to talk a little about you
sure.
and your group as well, that'd be
Sure.
swell.
My name again is Ted Brovitz. I am the owner and chief bottle washer of Brovitz Community Planning and Design. I live on the South Shore. I live up the road in Marshfield. So I'm here on a regular basis.
Right.
And we have put together a very good and well-rounded team. Working with me is Dotson and Flinker. They are planners and landscape architects out of Ashfield, Massachusetts, and have a great deal of experience in open space and resource planning, as well as village planning. They just wrote the handbook for the state of Rhode Island for village planning and design. So I'm glad to be working with Peter Flinker and their group again. I work with them on a lot of projects, and they'll add a lot to this process in terms of our town center and our open space and our recreation elements in the plan. Also with us is the principal group, Russ Preston and Kara Wilbur. They have a lot of experience in large-scale urban areas as well as very rural areas. Kara is their chief planner and has worked a lot in northern New England on several comprehensive plans and zoning and strategic area plans, corridor plans, and that sort of thing. Russ is an architect and an urban designer, and adds a lot in terms of how places take shape, whether there are town centers, our commercial corridors, our business parks. He really adds a lot to letting people sort of visualize different scenarios for the future in different parts of the community. Also with us is Niche Engineering. Scott Turner and his group are going to be working on the civil engineering aspect and transportation systems, infrastructure. Very good group that really has got a good reputation for sustainable design, infrastructure design, low impact. Don't buzz me with the jargon bell, but what people would call green infrastructure, basically managing stormwater systems and infrastructure so that it has the least amount of impact on the environment. So we're thrilled to be working with
Absolutely.
Kingston, and I think, like you said, we got off to a really good start with the first workshop, which is a very informal process with the community, open house, letting them have the opportunity to identify what they consider to be those challenges and opportunities, using those theme maps, land use map, open space, cultural and historic resources, transportation and infrastructure, and using their sticky notes in different colors.
That was a really, even for a small group, it was very informative. I mean, I think we really walked away from that open house with very clear notions of what people's concerns were.
Yeah.
And they were in line with ours as well, which was also confirming for the committee to know that they were headed in that right direction.
Yeah. It was also a good cross-section of folks.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't just the usual suspects. It was some young families and some people that are, active participants.
Business people. There were real estate people who were there who had a vested interest in what was going to be going on with the town, and the young people that were there was great to see. It was very nice. So.
And we're going to talk a bit more about public outreach.
Yes.
And in fact, we have an event coming up we're going to talk about in a separate show. We're going to mention on this show our design charrette as well. But as far as the master plan goes, and I'm going to, I have the state law here, which is just how exciting this stuff can be. And I'm not going to read it, but it has the particular elements of the master plan on it. So with the master plan, there's a goal and policy statement. There's a land use element. Elements are what's called the chapters. A housing chapter, economic development, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, a service and facilities element, a circulation element, which is essentially transportation, and the implementation program, which we touched on earlier. In addition, in our plan, we are going to have a sustainability element as well. because we look at how we live and how we live on the coast,
Right.
and we know that things are changing.
Absolutely.
With tides and storms and weather and things like that. So those are the particular elements of the master plan, and they're all interrelated. Transportation gets you to your house, to your job, to business and things like that. Housing cost, if you can't afford to live in the place you're at, then you've got to drive a farther distance, and then all of a sudden you're having more of an impact on roads and transportation. There are a lot of different things other than just your traditional, I'm in the car driving somewhere transportation. There are various modes, a mode, a way to travel, not really a technical term. But if I get into modal split, you may hit the bell. Bicycles, transit,
That's right.
GATRA, walking, and there are people who are fortunate enough to have live workspaces, place where they can live and work in the same spot and have a very short commute. So all those particular elements of the master plan are tied together at some level, and all of our consultants that Ted is on his team are all comfortable working in that interdisciplinary field, working between the two elements of.
And that's also why we have the representatives that we do have on the committee, because you want a slice of. We have Paul Basler because he has
and he's our highway superintendent.
He's the highway superintendent in town, so he has a concept of the roads, some of the obstacles that may face us in terms of what we want to do with that infrastructure, and also a historical perspective of what things have already happened that may play a role. I'm trying to local business people who have a vested interest as a citizen and a business person. So that is all tied in together with all of what Ted's people are doing as well.
Yeah, and those people who, like Paul, who have lived here their whole life, they know stuff we will never know.
That's correct. Right.
That we can't figure, and they have a connection to that. So when we talk about an outreach to the community, we talk about asking you to participate in the forums that we have or the surveys and things like that we do. It is very important that the folks who live here
That's right.
Take the time, and we'll try to make it as easy as we can with different with different meetings, with different communications, and Ted will talk about some of those, our picture sharing page and things like that, to help bring a bit more of that input in, because without the community, the plan is just a book.
That's right. And it just sits on a shelf, and it isn't a working paper document that takes you from one place to another. And our previous one did, and I think a lot of people don't connect it with things that actually then happened. And I think that's what we want people to have a different sense of this time around, that your input goes somewhere and has an outcome. And that's, I think, what I want people to be aware, that it's not just talk. It's not just tell us what you think and then we'll go do what we want later. There are things that we really would like the local townspeople to have a say in. And
the plan was, this is the third master plan that I know we're aware of. And now we call them master plans in Massachusetts. Other places are called comprehensive plans. People get a little confused because a comprehensive permit is an affordable housing thing, but we can call it a comprehensive plan.
Wait a minute, that was almost.
I'm always on the edge. I'm always just on the edge. So what I brought, and we'll have some graphics for me, is our 1970s master plan and our 1998 master plan that were previously done. And so we are fortunate enough to have some of the basis from the 1998 master plan to work off of. But it's amazing how things don't change from what people want, because things that were in the 1970 plans that were identified as concerns, things that people want, places, parks to go to, places to go to, affordable housing and things like that, they frankly don't change a whole lot. The challenges that we face sometimes change, and we'll get into some of those particulars in our future meetings as well. So at that, let's talk a little bit about just outreach. And if Ted, if you would talk a little bit about what we need to get from our community to have something that is of value to the community, I think that'd be very swell. So if you would mind sort of talking.
Yeah, so as we talked a little bit before, we had our first workshop, and I think that even though it was a small group, it was successful. We want to continue to get people involved in different ways, whatever's comfortable.
So when you say workshop, This doesn't sound like a fun thing to do, the workshop.
Well, it's work, but
Now-
it's
It
fun
is
work.
work,
Now,
but
we
it's
were at
fun
the
work.
Reed.
We were at the
It's
Reed
kind of like the
building,
Seven
that's
Dwarfs.
correct.
You whistle while you work because
Yeah.
it's so much fun to work on a master plan.
Yeah.
And it was
As the
not
master
a
plan
sitting
committee can
right.
attest to.
And it was not a sitting around workshop. It wasn't a lecture workshop. It
No,
was a get up
no.
and move around.
Had all the Reed
That's
filled
right.
with
It's interactive.
tables
Yep.
and maps
Right.
and stickers and snacks.
and
And snacks too.
That's
Yep,
right.
That's
Food
very
is an
important. You have to feed the
component.
folks, right?
That's right.
But interactive workshops and public participation programs is really important. And they can be in venues such as large-scale meetings and presentations, but there also can be one-to-one. So part of the approach here is to do things like office hours. So this month, in October, I'm going to start setting up office hours in Town Hall, so I'll be available to the community on a regular basis. So people can pop in informally and share their thoughts and ideas. We can talk about different scenarios, different things that people want us to focus on when we're putting together the master plan. And they can do it in sort of a private way. They don't have to say some of the things
Right.
they want to share with me necessarily with the entire community. It's a good way to sort of give people that opportunity to be open and honest about the things that they're concerned with and the things that might address their concerns through the master planning process.
And we capture everything that people tell us. So we don't necessarily say that Joe said this, but if Joe tells us something, it goes into the record.
It does. It won't be
Yeah.
attributed necessarily to that particular
Right.
person, but that's an opportunity or a challenge that we need to focus on in the master plan and come up with some way to address it.
Right.
And there's no wrong answer. So if you've got something on your mind like there's just too many cars, or we think the Patriots should have a practice facility here,
Right.
we'll put that into the mix.
No topic
Absolutely.
is off limits, really.
There's no topic off limits. It's
Right,
like brainstorming. Everything is free and clear.
That's right.
Bring your ideas.
Right.
We'll capture them and we'll synthesize them, or we'll put them into the plan.
That's right. We're also having regular monthly meetings with the master plan committee, and those are certainly open to the public, and we
That's right.
encourage people to attend. As you mentioned, we're going to talk in another segment, but we're going to do a townwide planning summit, which is basically a 3-day design workshop, or charrette, where people, you get to ding me the bell.
I'll let you explain charrette.
Which is a very interactive process where people will have a kickoff opening session where people will work together on looking at the future of Kingston and things that they'd like to see happen, as well as one-on-one and also focus groups. We're going to have focus groups with different themes so that we'll get together with the business community, the larger landowners, let them tell us what their concerns are, what they think is as opportunities in the future, as well as elected officials, board members, different officials, different people like from the school system,
Right.
from emergency services, and basically get those people to start thinking collectively in terms of what the issues are and what needs to happen in the
And have
future.
them go to essentially a clearinghouse. So they'll get to say it to somebody who's then going to collect it and bring it back to the committee
Right.
and share that with the committee, whereas we might not have that information
Right.
otherwise. So
Right.
that
Right.
would be very helpful.
Right. And that sort of helps us put together those basic elements of the plan. So we're meeting with the business community, we're having open meetings with the public. We'll get a good sense of what the economic development issues are and the opportunities and how we couple that with an implementation program. Same with housing, same with open space, cultural and historic resources. All these elements, in public facilities and services, they are basically sort of the heart and soul of the master plan. But the one common denominator is that they all feed into the land use section of the plan. And that's the way this is going to be organized. The Kingston Master Plan will be organized so that we're basically looking at the existing conditions, trends, characteristics, and opportunities under these basic elements, and that will all feed up into the overall land use plan. Because whether it's public land or private land, economic development is a big part of that. Housing is certainly infrastructure, natural resources. There are places in town that people want to protect and preserve, but there's also places in town that they want to see grow and develop, and maybe change.
And
maybe
maybe
they're currently
change,
change
right.
and they want to see different things
Right.
happen. So, so you've got your basic components, you've got your land use plan, which pulls everything together, and then you've got your implementation strategy that takes that to the next step of how we're going to get things done.
And an example of an implementation would be perhaps a change in a bylaw.
Right.
Or
Right.
updating a zoning bylaw, or some change to parking restrictions, or
Exactly.
things along those lines would
Yeah.
be part of the implementation. And I think we've gotten a little caught up in some of our meetings about that end game versus how, the here and now, because everybody wants to see the end
Right.
result. But that would be an example of implementation, which is just as critical as this part, but we can't implement a plan we don't have yet.
Right. And you mentioned that, you're looking back at the 1970 plan, the 1998
Mm-hmm.
plan, and, the process that's going on today. And by and large, people want the same thing
They
they
do.
did 30, 40
Right.
years ago.
Town center is in every single
town
one.
center, good jobs,
Exactly.
open space, recreation.
Access to,
But the
right.
toolbox changes. That's the difference.
That's right.
There are more tools available today, and different tools, and that's part of the implementation program. So the state, for example, between 1998 and today, passed a series of new things that we want to consider, like tax increment financing, business improvement districts, and other sort of incentives to build up civic and economic life in your community. So those are the things that we're going to be adding to the plan this round.
Right.
And one thing I could say about our plans is that, first of all, they're very graphically oriented. We try to reduce the text as much as possible and sort of focus on the illustrations and the graphics that really sort of send the picture and explain what we want to convey to the community. And they're very specific in terms of the implementation. What are the actions and strategies that the town needs to take in order
Right.
to progress these things that people want to see?
Right. What about you just mentioned to me earlier, the website.
The website. So we are in the process of developing a website, and that should be online in the next week or so.
That'd be great.
One of our master plan committee members,
That's
Matt, has agreed to put together.
Give him a little shout out.
He did a great job. I've seen the first setup for it, and it's going to be great. We also have a Facebook that's up and running, and we encourage people to sign up for that and go on and look. We
Right.
have the results from the first public open house
Perfect.
on that, with all the maps with the
The
sticky
maps,
notes
all
on
our
them.
graphics.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
maps were the best part of
Yeah.
that workshop, I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah. So yeah, there's those venues out there for
Okay.
people to tap into and keep posted on what's going on with the master plan.
Right, exactly.
So in addition to the office hours that Ted talked about, we do have the 3-day workshop coming up. That'll be at the senior center. We'll talk a
right.
little bit more about that, but I just want to keep kind of building on that, because that's frankly is a big event.
It is.
And something that we're hoping to get a very good turnout. That's why we have 3
We-
days
right.
set aside to do that. At this point, let's talk a bit about what we've got as far as some of the things we've heard from folks about early on in the process. One of those was from our retired fire chief, who said, "Nobody reads the paper. How are people going to find out about this? We went off with a litany of new media." So for the chief's benefit, we've got the Facebook page and the master plan. And I keep threatening, and I will actually be on Twitter here within the next week or so to post
Right.
some things about that. So it's a matter of getting folks out, not just for the events, but essentially if something comes up, you send it to us, whether it's the picture sharing
That's right.
Yeah.
a file and things like
That's
that.
right.
There's no necessarily batching of this information. And with the choices that we have, as we said, there's a lot of different ways to communicate with people from the 1970s. You got an idea at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night.
Right,
You can send me an email. You
That's
can
correct.
send a Facebook post, and we'll have contacts at the end of the show. But I'm pretty easy to find. I'm Bott, B-O-T-T, at kingstonmass.org. And so it's very easy to find us, with comments
Absolutely.
and things like that.
And I would encourage people to even come to a planning board meeting or come to a master plan meeting, any of those forums that allow you to speak openly, then you should, if you have concerns, you should come. Absolutely.
And for the most part, the master or the planning board if someone comes with a
Right.
question about something, they will typically find the time for them.
That's right. If
There's
it's not
no-
on our agenda, but
There's no open forum
There is no-
or
that's
anything
correct.
like that, and with changes to the state's laws about open meetings,
That's
you just
right.
can't make stuff up at a meeting. But if someone was,
That's true.
but if someone was to come in and have something they wanted to address, I would venture to say the chairman would be happy to
I would say
to
so.
accommodate them. But once again, drop me a line, let me know
That's
that you're
right.
coming, so I can clarify that with them. So. I want to thank you guys for coming. We, as I said, this is our inaugural show, so we're sort of making our way. I'm very happy that there was very little bell ringing.
very little bell ringing.
At the show, and hopefully at future shows, when we start to get into, pervious pavement
Right.
and
Streetscapes.
streetscapes and all that stuff that we just love to talk about, we'll try to explain what all those things are. So that's your hook for the
That's
next
right.
show. What is a streetscape? Maybe they'll talk about it in one of those shows, and we'll try to give you a little heads up.
And maybe that bell will ring.
But you can watch as many shows as you like. You can tell your friends. It's
Please.
online, so you.
Maybe we should have a terminology on the
Maybe we
the
should have,
website.
we'll put our terminology on the website.
Yeah. Planner
What were they
terminology.
talking about?
Yes, and please shoot me a
Can look
line
it
if
up.
we talked about something you didn't understand, and we'll bring it up next time around. So once again, I want to thank you guys very much for
Sure.
coming in. Susan Boyer, Chairman of the Master Plan Committee, sitting Planning Board member, all-around good citizen. Ted Brovitz carries a little baggage. He's a Duke guy. I went to Georgia Tech, but I'm watching him for you ACC fans out there.
We're just a basketball school, but we did beat them in football this
That's
weekend.
right. Oh, see?
So thank you all very much for coming today.
Thanks for
I
having
look
us.
forward to seeing folks who are watching us at home come to some of our meetings at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
And we're all very happy to have you on today. So
Thanks.
thank you much.
Thanks, Tom.
All right.